Welcome back, everybody. It's going to be a great day today. We are chatting with, it's MUFON Day. And as a lot of you know, Jason is a MUFON investigator. And today we have Jeremy Ray. You might have seen him on Hangar 1 UFO Files, also the Alaska Triangle, field investigator, now chief investigator for Colorado of MUFON. Here's a guy who's literally been involved with hundreds, if not thousands, of cases. Separate the garbage from the good. And Jason, as you know, that's probably not a very easy thing to do.
It's a lot of work. This guy's been at it for a long time, and to get to the level that he's at, he's even a ST.A.R team investigator as well. Like, you got to know your stuff, you got to be good, and the dedication that it takes to work for free, right? This is a non-profit organization, so nobody's making any money doing this. So the fact that he's been doing it for 17 years now, is crazy. That shows dedication.
Yeah. And I want to ask him too, as a guy who's seen, everything, heard everybody's story. When you go to bed at night, what do you think? Like, now that you've been given all these little bits of the puzzle, a lot of us don't have, what do you actually think about the whole phenomenon? And I like getting these people's it's taken them years to form their opinion as of now. And I'm curious to know what him and some of our other guests this year's right now opinion is. So we're going to ask him all that. And we'll be right back after our intro with MUFON's Jeremy Ray. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of UAP Studies Podcast. I am Louis Borges. Joining me, as always, my good friend and illustrious co-host, Jason Gilmet. How you doing?
I am doing very good. I was going to say this in the previous episode, but you have not gained any weight at all during the holidays, Louis.
I haven't gained weight since I was 18 years old. I'm the track and field hockey player that can eat whatever he wants and never gain a pound. And everybody hates me for it, but if I wanted to put on 20 pounds, I would have a hard time to do that. So
you can be like Christian Bale that could just put on or lose pounds as you wishes.
Yeah, and Matthew McConaughey's got a thing for doing that too, looking all gaunt and starving, just to make a role happen. But today's MUFON Day. A couple of MUFON guys in the house here. Jason, you're a member of MUFON, and our guest Jeremy Ray is also. And we want to welcome Jeremy Ray. Many of you have seen him on TV, star of shows like Hangar 1, UFO Files, and the Alaska Triangle. He's been researching over 15 years in California, Colorado, and Texas as well. Currently, he's the chief investigator for Colorado MUFON, and even did some work with Bigelow Aerospace, BAASS, looking at some high-profile UFO cases as well. So very warm welcome to the show, Mr. Jeremy Ray.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing me on this awesome show. I appreciate it, sir.
Appreciate having you, man. It's our favorite thing to do on a Sunday is chat about UAPs and all things UFO and alien related. And we want to pick your brain. You've been doing this a long time. But for some of our viewers who aren't familiar with you, maybe Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into this field.
Oh, that's easy. I joined MUFON what got me into this field is I didn't believe in UFOs when I was a kid growing up. I saw one with my own eyes, and that day changed my entire life. And from that day forward, what's 1996 to now, I've been heavily just trying to solve the mystery. I mean, I know UFOs are real. My main questions are, who are they? Why are they here? What do they want? Those are three questions I haven't had an answer to yet. And I've been in MUFON for about 17 years now, but kind of hopping around here. How it started, it was March 20th, 1996. I was a cadet at Marine Military Academy, and I was home for spring break. And my hometown was, during the time, was Victoria, Texas. We lived in a real nice neighborhood. It was called Bramblebush. And one of my buddies, he had a pickup truck and he had a driver's license. I didn't have a driver's license yet. I think I was about 17. And our plan was we were going to go to South Padre Island and party. And somehow I was going to score the beer and all this kind of stuff. So I had this surefire plan and we were going to have a great time. Well, anyway, that didn't happen. I was walking over to his house, came around the corner. The neighborhood kind of curves a little bit. And when I came around, there was this light hovering about treetop level, big sucker, and it was bright. It was brighter than the sun, but it didn't hurt your eyes to look at it. It was really weird and strange. And I I stood there for about 5 minutes and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I started ringing the doorbells to get neighbors out of the house because I figured, well, I'll get a grown up out here to tell me what this is. And so I walked across the street, rang the doorbell. Neighbor came out. I didn't know him because they were many houses down from where I lived. So I introduced myself and I said, hi, I'm Jeremy Ray. I'm your neighbor down the street. I just happen to be walking in the neighborhood and I see this light right over here and I can't tell what it is. And I was hoping maybe you could tell me what it is, sir. So he had an awning kind of thing to where he couldn't see. So he had to step out. And when he stepped out, he looked at the object and then he looked at me and he goes, Holy Mary, Mother of God. And then he turned around and went back inside his house. And I thought that was kind of strange reaction because it's just a light. It's obviously some kind of weather phenomenon or something. I just needed a scientific answer so I could go on with my day. So I started walking down the sidewalk to ring another neighbor's door. And when I did that, the first neighbor, his name was Dick, he came out with his wife and he had a camera and sunglasses and he was ready to rock. So I turned back around and walked back. And I go, so this isn't normal, is it? He goes, no, it isn't. I've never seen anything like this in my life. So when I started to walk, when I stood beside him, I said, well, let's see, do you think we can get a picture of it? Because the sun was up here and the UFO was right under the sun. So the sun just beating down your eyes. It's around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so anyway, Dick brought the camera up. It was one of those old ones that you have to wind up. And he brought it up. And when he brought it up, the object shot right up into the sun to where we couldn't see it. I mean, it actually reacted to Dick's movement. So I thought it was going to leave. So I told Dick, put the camera down. And as soon as he brought the camera down, the object came back to its original position. And that's when we knew it was under some kind of intelligent control. I mean, we were shocked. So I wanted to get under it because the sun was in my face. So I walked towards it. And when I was walking towards it, it started to back up. Now it stayed at the pace of my walking pace. Okay. So for me, it just looked like the object was there and I just wasn't getting to it. But they were standing still and they were like, yes, it's backing away from you. And I was arguing with them, saying, no, it's not backing away. It's right here. Because I stop and I don't see it moving. And then I start moving. I just can't get to it. I think the best way to describe what this object looked like, if you're walking in a parking lot and you saw the sun beat down on a bumper, that's what it looked like. It was like a bright light with these streaks coming out on the side. So anyway, I walked back. The object followed me, and I figured, well, it's not going to let me get under it. So since it's following me, I'll just let it follow me, and I'll walk past Dick and his wife. And once it comes, and I told him, I said, once it goes over your head, tell me what you see. So I walked past them, and it stopped before it went over him. And then this way, I flanked around it when I got behind it, and I was in Mrs. Ladwick's yard and rang her doorbell and got her out. And anyway, this object hung around for 15 minutes. I got a really good look at it. I'm skipping a few things. One time when Dick's like, yeah, I can see more of the sunglasses. I was like, well, let me take a look. So I put the sunglasses on. And what I could see in the light was like, I call them 4 iron bars. There was actual metal structure up there. Like what I saw with my normal eye is just a bright light. But when I put the sunglasses on, I could see these bars and I could see the light pulsate around the bars to where you couldn't see the bars anymore. Right. And then it would pulsate back and I would see it. It was almost like it was breathing. So he knew there was something up there. So I was getting kind of excited. I told Miss Ladwick and she freaked out. And I think she said, oh my God. And she walked directly under it. And when she got under it, it took off. And the best way to describe it is if you had a rubber band and you cut the rubber band and you held one end and I held the other and we let go of it. It just looked like it folded upon itself. And I can't tell you which direction it went. It was so fast. I just remember everybody's shadows got real dark. And when I looked up, it looked like a rattlesnake and the scales were lighting up beautiful, like neon colors, purple, pink, and blue. And it was just flashing and it just wham. I mean, like in a second. So like I say, that one day changed my life. In MUFON, we have the Jock Valet classification system. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind I think it's reality transformation, and that is true. My whole reality changed. Just what I believed was impossible is now possible. I mean, I didn't care about going to South Padre Island. I didn't care about doing that. Was not important anymore. What was important was to try to figure out what this was. And then over years, this is the 90s, it wasn't acceptable. I went through the ridicule factor over and over, trying to justify what I've seen. And in my small town, reputation's important, and I didn't care about that. It was more important to me. And I just remember one day when I was 18, I said, when I get older and I grow up, I'm going to educate the public about UFOs because this is real, and we got to figure out what it is, because even the grown-ups don't have an answer. To me, that was a big, when you're growing up as a kid, you think the grown-ups know everything. They don't, because even me right now, I still don't know what it was that I saw, and I've looked at thousands of UFO pictures that come into MUFON, and I still haven't found one that looks exactly like the one I saw. Yeah. So that kind of over years, when I got into college, I was studying in IT, and I just didn't want to do it. And I thought about, man, I want to be a UFO investigator. That's what I want to do. So I looked it up, and I realized they don't pay. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do it anyway. And I've been with MUFON for 17 years. I started out in California as an investigator there under Ruben Urorte. He was my state director during the time. He trained me. And then I moved to Texas right before Stephenville happened. And I believe Ken Cherry was the state director during that time. And that's the time I got on the S.T.A.R team, and we'll get on to that in a minute. And then I moved up to Colorado, and I've been here ever since. I think I've been here for over 12 years, and I'm chief investigator of Colorado MUFON. So yeah.
Is Colorado like a hot spot as well for UAP activity?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep. You got all the nice military bases around here. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
You got North Command. You got everything. I mean, the question is, what are these UFOs? Are these some high tech, new, aerospace drones that we're thinking it's something else, or there are others? I think the answer to that question is true on both. Right. So yes, there's a lot of activity in Colorado. There's a lot of activity in California, Texas. I know we talk about hotspots a lot sometimes, but every state has got UFO reports coming in. I mean, as you as a MUFON investigator, or you can get into CMS and see that there's cases coming in daily. And most of the public don't know that. They think that it's a once a month or once a year type thing. We get reports all the time.
Yeah. And to mention too, that it's like what, 1 out of 10 people that will report a sighting that they see. And that's a huge deal. I mean, if you're getting reports every day, that means a lot more people are seeing this. This is a lot more prevalent than is, out there right now, or the reports that are coming in.
Yes, sir.
So that's a huge deal.
Even though some of the reports can be explained away, come to a down to earth explanation, because some people are not, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't look at the sky very much. They look at their phones, so they might not know a celestial object or what a satellite looks like, or, and so that's what we try to do, is root those things out. And sometimes when we do come to an unknown, it doesn't mean it's an extraterrestrial spaceship from another planet. It just means we went through our entire checklist, and we can't come to a, down to earth explanation of what the individual saw. But most of the time when people report a UFO sighting to MUFON, I mean, they really, it really bothered them, and they wanted to get it out, and they had to do the research to find MUFON and then submit the report. But you are correct about the 1 to 10 ratio. Usually one person sees it, but actually 10 people see it, and that's the one person that makes that report.
Yeah.
So,
and when they actually go to and submit the report, I mean, it's quite,
tedious.
they're just, there's a lot of questions that are being asked. You got to really mean, your submission at that point to submit it and then wait for a reply, right? So, I always thought that was fascinating. Obviously, the States has a lot more sighting reports than Canada does, but you guys have a larger population as well. California is very populated, so they see, there's a lot more reports there as well. But just the United States in general seems to be such an active hotspot for UAP sightings. I know that's taken place everywhere else, but you never hear anything coming from China, and I don't think they're ever going to admit that they're having a problem with this as well. but it's, you know, the United States is what basically, you know, when we think UFOs or crash landing, it's always Roswell or one of these incidences. So yeah, no, it's great to be on it. Now I want to talk about the STAR team
Sure.
with MUFON. So first of all, what kind of training goes into becoming a STAR team, and what does the STAR team do?
Oh well, there's, if I could break it up into two parts, the start team in the beginning, the very beginning of MUFON, were only 5 people. They had, PhDs. They were just like the best of investigators. And the only time where that spread out to where more MUFON field investigators could become start team is when Bigelow stepped in and started funding UFO research. And that was the first time me and many others got paid, because MUFON, we don't collect a paycheck. This is all volunteering. It's a nonprofit organization, uh, but these cases that you would get paid for were it wasn't like a simple lights in the sky. It would be a category 2 or 3 type cases, and those dealt with close encounters of the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth kind, landing trace evidence, maybe material recovered, and if we ever were lucky, maybe a crash retrieval if we could beat Men in Black or the military. So that was the goal of when Bigelow stepped in. Now I'm still having to answer your question about training. That would be you've been an investigator for quite some time. You know what I mean?
But yeah, yeah. So like to be
Yeah,
on the STAR team is to be on for a while, or
yeah.
you talk about, yeah, me.
Yeah, I'm backing up. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
hopping around too much. So you would have to be an investigator for a while and kind of know your stuff. And
Right.
then usually the state director or assistant state director would be like, you're a great investigator, you're doing a great job, we're putting you on the STAR team. The STAR team now isn't like that. But back during the Bigelow times, that's what they were calling it. It was basically STAR was an acronym for Strike Team for Area Research, supposed to be a rapid response special unit to deploy anywhere in the United States in 24 hours to deal with a case that would have evidence.
Right.
But Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies and MUFON created this SIP project. SIP stood for Star Impact Project. So that's the project I was talking about. And that went on for about a year. And it was cool. I mean, you couldn't make a living doing it. I don't know. I was a little naive. When I was 20, I was like, I'm going to make a living doing this. Now, I only had 2 cases in a year. They had to be really good cases that that I'd get paid for, and it's basically $100 a case, but they covered or individual. So if I interviewed you and somebody else, that might be $200, but everything was covered: your hotel, your flight, your rent a car. It was really cool, and it actually worked. It showed that MUFON could have a quick reaction type force, and I would say I've heard other people have different opinions, but from my opinion, it was very successful.
Right.
So
And
yes, sir.
speaking of cases, Hangar One UFO Files was a show just dedicated to talking about MUFON cases.
Yes, sir.
And you were on it for quite a few years. Are there any that really stand out or stick with you as being like sort of your favorites or most popular? Like of all the MUFON, what are
Yeah.
the ones that you really feel are worth looking at?
Well, okay, if you're talking about Hangar One, most of all those cases, the witnesses gave permission to have their story told.
Yep.
Some of my personal best cases, they don't want nobody knowing. So I can tell you what happened, but I can't give details. But I've had a STAR team case through Bigelow where 2 individuals were driving down the road and a UFO came and took them and the car.
Nice.
And yeah, so uh, I interviewed those guys. What a very strange case. Matter of fact, I'll elaborate on that. I'll tell you a
Yeah.
little bit about how that was. So these 2 guys went on a vacation, and they were heading back home, and they had about a 4-hour drive to their destination, and they decided to pull off the road because they saw a bunch of groundhogs. One of the passenger, I'll call him Witness B, was an amateur photographer, and he wanted to get out and take pictures of these groundhogs. So when he got out, he started taking it. They started getting the feeling like they were being watched, and they needed to get out of there. They kind of didn't even have to communicate with each other. They just got spooked for some reason. Their intuition was, I guess, kicking in overdrive. So they got in the car and it's probably a mile after they started driving, or a minute when they started driving, and all of a sudden a flying saucer, like the bottom of a plate, just comes right over the top of their car and stays with them. And so the guy puts metal to the pedal, it starts to go as fast as he can to outrun it. And while he's doing it, the passenger's looking out the window and he sees this naked man running through the desert. Now keep in mind they're going about 80 to 90 miles an hour. Okay. And this thing's catching up to him. And it's running diagonal while they're going straight down the road. And so obviously it was going faster than the car. And by the time it got close, it was like it wasn't a human. The head they both described looked like an upside down teardrop, a big head, little neck, looked like, and the head was kind of cocked this way, like the head looked too heavy, you know, like it was having a hard time holding its head, but it was running up to the car. And so they have this coming their way, and they've got a UFO over their head, or a flying saucer. And the next thing you know, there was a big loud bang, and the whole when that being got close to the car, and the whole car lit up bright white, and they felt like they were being lifted up. They have no memory on what happened. All they know is they were driving down the road, they were giggling, having a good time, and then the guy goes, witness B, the passenger goes, "Hey, didn't we hit somebody?" Because they had a rental car. And it's like, "Didn't we hit something?" And then the other guy's like, "Yeah, you know what? I do remember a bang." So they pulled outside of the road, wondering why they couldn't remember any more details. And when they started to walk around the car, that's when all their memories came back of them trying to outrun the saucer above their head and this being running alongside of in the desert, catching up to them. They had 2 hours of missing time. They should have been home a lot sooner. So it really shook them up once they started going back and forth, and they contacted MUFON, and during that time, that's when Bigelow's project was started. So they took it very interesting. They found that a case of interest. So Bigelow sent their team out first, not MUFON. And when Bigelow arrived at the house, or called them, I don't remember how the details went, they were really upset because they contacted MUFON and they were wondering why Bigelow Aerospace is calling them. And so they decided they didn't want to talk to MUFON. They didn't want to talk to anybody. Communication just stopped. And then I got a call from Richard Lang, who was my S.T.A.R team manager during the time. And he knew I was a pretty friendly guy, easy to approach, and he wanted me to give it a second attempt. So about 2 weeks later, I was able to win their trust and actually conduct a proper investigation. And supposedly that vehicle, this is where my part stops. I just write up the report. But supposedly that rent-a-car was from Hertz, and I believe that Bigelow bought it. And we had a scientific advisor named Chuck Malden, and I believe he scanned it. And what was the only thing they got off that vehicle was a high electromagnetic radiation coming off the windshield, which doesn't make sense. This is several weeks later. Okay.
Right.
So I asked Chuck, I said, "Why, this is made out of breakaway glass. It shouldn't be doing that. Why is this happening?" And his answer to me was shocking. He goes, "Well, I think when they took them, they didn't open the car doors. They just pulled them through the windshield." That's what he was thinking.
Right.
So it just kind of went over my head. But Chuck was a scientist, and I believe he worked at Los Alamos. Don't quote me on that. But he was a UN weapons inspector, and I believe Saddam Hussein had a head out on him for something that happened during Desert Storm, inspecting that kind of stuff. But yeah, that would be an interesting guy to interview because he got to look at the evidence and check all that stuff. So, but I will never forget that case because I actually believe it really happened. These guys were scared out of their minds. It's really hard to fake that. And I just kind of feel like they were hoping we would have answers for them. And I'm so sorry I don't. I just,
we interviewed Calvin Parker, and he was mentioning about his experience with his friend, which I always forget the name of his
Charlie.
fellow abductor. Charlie Hicks, right?
Yeah.
And just to hear that story, and I had wondered if he had ever had a follow-up, because we hear about these one-offs. We call them one-offs because there's either people that have it run in their family where like mom or dad got abducted, now they get abducted, and then their children are getting abducted, so there's like a family relation there. And then there's one-offs, like, you know, we're thinking Travis Walton, for instance, where they don't come back, they don't take him again, there's no previous history of abductions. So I've always wondered what these one-offs were all about, because it seems to not go with the theme of, you know, following the family line.
Yes,
It's
sir.
just, yeah, just this one time of like somebody getting taken, and it was like a, you know, a one night stand, if you will. There's not going
Maybe
to be
it's
a
a
Okay,
repeat,
different
right?
experiment.
I
Maybe
just
one
was
is ongoing and one is, you know, looking for something different. Hence, no
Yeah,
need to go back.
yeah.
I remembered I've met Travis many times. He comes to Colorado and speaks, and we always go out to dinner. And I remember one time, you remember the movie Fire in the Sky? He had little mini posters that he was selling. And I was like, hey, I want to get one of those. So when he signed it, he signs his name, but he leaves a little quote, and his quote was, "Take my advice, stay in the truck." You know. So to answer your question, I think it was just being at the wrong place or being at the right place at the wrong time kind of scenario. Uh, it seemed like that UFO was doing something out there. Travis got out of the truck, got under it. It's highly possible that even my UFO sighting of how I was trying to get under it and it backed away, it didn't want anybody to get right under it. Maybe there's something harmful to that. Maybe Travis really, got real seriously hurt, and they took him, fixed him, and brought him back several days later. And uh, I even to this day, I would say my opinion of Travis is he's a haunted man. It really, I mean, that was a long time ago, and it still affect him. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's affected his life, and I know he has regrets. I think he probably wish he did stay in a truck. That would be kind of yeah, wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe that's why he hasn't had any other experiences, just that one time thing. But we have cases where that is a question that I'll ask when people are having multiple sightings or having a really big sighting. I would ask them, have you seen any more? And then they will be like, when I was a little kid, but my mother's seen it and my grandma's seen it and she talks about it. And you start to see that it kind of follows you
Yeah.
know, then that woman will have a daughter, and then the daughter will be saying she's been seeing things. And it's just, yeah, that pattern is very real. I don't know. I've heard that 1,000 times.
Yeah. Well, even like I was mentioning before, I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast, but uh, you know, when people find out that you're interested in the topic, they'll come and approach you, or they'll say, you know what, my grandfather saw something one time when he was fishing. It's always somebody that's fishing or walking a dog or smoking. I think those are the people that normally see UFOs or UAPs. But somebody knows somebody who's seen something enough to convince them that that was true. Like, oh, if you knew my grandfather, you know he wouldn't lie. And
Oh
he
yeah,
said he
right.
saw that, right? It's like, dude, everybody knows. Like, if you haven't seen one yourself, you know somebody. You're directly in link with somebody who has had an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Even talking with, you know, the people inside the CIA and the Department of Defense, people in there are having experiences, for crying out loud. They're waking up with, you know, the three little guys in their bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not just the general population, it's people inside the Department of Defense, people in the military. Like, this is a huge issue that is, you know, like, we're keeping it hush hush. But as you've been working on this for like 15 years, have you come across anybody like that? Like somebody who's like deep in the stage of saying, hey, you're doing a good job, or there's something there to it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would say the intelligence community, Department of Defense, they take this very, very seriously.
Yeah.
I think some of them are very scared. But yeah, there's an interest in it, especially in the aerospace community.
Mhm.
A lot of these guys, like even Robert Bigelow, has said what he thought was valuable information. If we could just get a case where someone said they were on board the craft, he wanted to know what the person saw. He wanted to know what the cockpit looked like.
Right.
That's very valuable information to
What's
them.
the
They will,
smell? That's what I
yeah,
want to know. What's the smell in there, right? Like in a ship. What's it smell like?
he was willing to pay money for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was because that was a big question with me and a bunch of my colleagues was like, why is he paying us for reports? It's because they find anything to do with the craft very, you know, anything that we can learn from a person's experience is valuable information that they were willing to pay. I've heard that statement many
And
times.
if you can figure out 0 point energy,
Yes,
that's
sir.
game over. He who gets there first wins, you know, in terms of military and everything else moving forward. If you have technology similar to what UFO would have,
Mhm.
you can't go to war with a group of people like that, right?
Well,
And I
I
wanted to
thought
ask
about
you,
that. I thought about why do they put the classification systems on that kind of stuff? Even if they had figured it out, they would probably stamp it top secret. And I think the reason would be, we always think being suppressed and let's stay with the oil and combustion engines. I could see we would have to kind of spiritually grow up
yeah,
because that's an enormous amount of power that you can grab from the ether and travel the cosmos, right? You get some disgruntled teenager or somebody that's got problems, they could probably make a bomb out of it in their garage and not just blow up our planet, but the entire solar system. You don't understand the range of
yeah,
how powerful 0 point is. And I believe that 0 point energy, I've talked to people in the field. That's that's something of great interest of how these vehicles fly. But of course, we could talk about Nikola Tesla and magnetics. And I don't think I think that's why they call them UAPs. They don't call them UFOs because these objects are not flying.
yeah.
They're,
And it's not
they're
always a craft or a
yeah,
physical object either.
right.
Sometimes it's spooky orb-like things or just lights or energies or whatever. But so what I wanted
Dimensional.
to ask you, like,
Yes, sir.
you've been doing this years. What do you sum it up as? A lot of people have various theories. Like we chatted with Daryl Sims a little while ago,
Sure.
and he was saying that the aliens we recognize are either created or hatched or cloned from the
Yeah.
real minds in the universe, and they're just doing the work of it. But yet, that's all we get to see. And he seems to think that it's not friendly and more on the nefarious, I guess, type of side. So, like, do you
Okay.
think these are interstellar travelers, interdimensional? Are they here? Are like when
Yeah.
you go to bed at night and you got to try to make sense of all this, what do you think about? I know it's a difficult
No,
question,
I
but
can answer it. I'll
what
tell
do
you,
you generically think this whole bloody thing is?
I would say that a part of me, my intuition feels that there's something that we haven't thought of yet. Okay. But everything you just said has crossed my mind. Are they here? Do they walk amongst us? Are the Greys more robotoid
Yeah,
clones that are just busy worker bees to carry out a task? And all the tall Greys, are they in charge? Or are the reptilians? You hear what I call that? I call that the
yeah,
lore of ufology and stories that you hear. Um, there's one thing that I know, and nobody can convince me, is us human beings. That yeah, I can argue with a religious person about this or whatever. We don't know who we are. We don't know why we're here. We don't know what this reality is. I think if we or what this place is, if we had the true answers to those questions, okay, not that something my teacher told me or a book told me or things that were passed down, we might be able to solve this. I do know that consciousness plays a huge key role to this. That's hardly not really discussed. I
yeah,
mean, it is here and there, but my experience with that UFO, there was a consciousness link. I forgot to throw that in there. I mean, if you ever go outside and see a UFO, I would recommend you should say in your mind, hey, if you are who I think you are, move to the left to verify and see if it does. Because this isn't just me. I hear this a lot. So I'm going to just sum this up. This is what I think contact would be like. It won't be like a UFO landing on the White House lawn and an alien come out and say, take me to your leader or whatever. You know what I mean? It'll be more like we all wake up one day and I had this dream I want to tell you about. And you had the same dream too. We all had the same dream. I think that's how consciousness, the contact of meeting these things, because from what I hear is when you make eye contact with these things, you're completely naked. I mean, there is a telepathic communication. They're inside your mind. You can't hide nothing, if you want to lie or whatever, and you're an open book. And for people that have never experienced that for the first time, that's that reality transformation. That's when your mind is just blown. You didn't even know you were capable of doing that. You might be hearing my voice in your head, but I'm not moving my mouth. And I've heard this a lot. I've had a case recently where a guy just made eye contact with a praying mantis type being that was on his property, and they were communicating just for that few seconds. And for him, it was kind of a psychological rape because he, it's your mind, it's your territory, and this thing was all in it. But he was also in the mind of that being too. And I've heard that a lot. Well, we don't really usually in MUFON. I mean, we hear these things. We have a thing called ERT that will deal with those type of situations. I mostly focus on nuts and bolts, or basically sighting reports. Now, the nuts and bolts type craft, I really think some of these might be ours. I know the TR3B, the Black Triangle. You can't say that that's ours because that there's reports back in the 1800s and before of triangle shaped craft. You got to keep that in mind. But if it's metallurgy, I'm kind of on the fence. Could this be a top secret aerospace new high tech drone like the Tic Tac UFO? I just don't. For me, I'm on the fence on it. That could be one of ours. That's what I think. But a
Yeah.
new type of drone that could go underwater, in the atmosphere, and in space. I'm willing to say we need to look a little bit deeper on that. But when it comes to the other UFOs that are just lights or dimensional, like mine was kind of dimensional. When I looked at the light and I followed the leading edge of the beams that came out, it started to become more transparent. So it almost looked like it was a cloaked ship and the sunshine was just bouncing off it at a certain or part of the ship wasn't I was just seeing one part of the ship. There might have been a bigger object that was there because, and I think that happens a lot. I've seen, I know they hide in clouds. Get a lot of reports of that. People think there's a cloud above them, and I've actually had a sighting of my own very similar to that. But I've had sightings throughout my whole life. And for me, being a MUFON investigator, I do want to learn as much as I can, and I am. I'm still learning after 17 years, but I'm also there to help people, let them know that no, you're not crazy. I've been through it too. I know you can't talk to your neighbors about it, but
Yeah.
just some reassurance. That's the best. But I feel like I'm doing a good service to humanity, and actually, I'm also a patriot. If Uncle Sam wants to see what we're doing, it's fine with me too. I don't care. I think we all need to kind of work together to solve this phenomenon. I think it's very, very important, and it's definitely worthy of investigating.
You
Definitely.
you mentioned as well about the consciousness thing, and like these crafts seem to be conscious. Like when you're looking
Yes.
at one, you're not just looking at like the way you would look at a driver behind the wheel of a car. You know it's a car, but
Hmm.
somehow when you're looking at these crafts, you're like, that is a conscious. It's
Hmm.
a consciousness that I'm looking at. It's not just a
Yes, sir.
craft, and they respond to people on the ground. They, speak telepathically to people. It's not just the speaking telepathically. It's a transfer of emotions,
Hmm.
feelings,
Yep.
thoughts, ideas. It's like an invasion, and because it's stuff that you've never had before. You've never had that ability before, and somehow they hold the key to that, and they keep mentioning to people, raise your consciousness. Or if they
Hmm.
get people to fly their ships, they said, well, the ships operate on my consciousness extended to the ship. So
Yep.
consciousness has a huge part to play in this. And
Very.
I keep thinking about this, like we're humans right now, all three of us. We're conscious, but we're created from the universe, so technically we're conscious because of the universe. That might be something that, if life across the galaxy or the universe is like that, we're all the same consciousness. We just happen to inhabit different bodies, and we're different evolutionary scales, right? But yeah, no, this is sorry, I just went down the rabbit hole, but that's
No,
usually where it leads, right? You keep
I,
questioning these things.
I actually wish people would talk more about it or just kind of get it because if you approach UFO and you think that you're going to be okay with distance and you're not going to have no interaction, you might be wrong because they know you see them. If you see them, they see you, and whatever you're thinking, you know, uh, I've had it happen to me. I've had the emotions. I've had extreme amount. I don't even can't even find the right word for it, but it's close to love. Like I don't know if you can. I know you can't remember, but if you were a baby and your mom holding you,
Yeah.
I know it's just so strange that there is emotion. There is sometimes intellectual type stuff. Like a couple people became started writing down algebra equations, and they're not even into math. It changes people, and actually, some people become psychic just from the experience. It's like riding a bike, and you never forget. So when you're forced into this experience, you start to realize that yourself, that you have psychic abilities, because it's not just that thing took over you. It was y'all are working together, you know what I mean? And then the thing leaves and you're like, oh my God, there is something to this. And you start to realize later on through your life, you start to feel like you're a superhero because you get that intuition. I should slow down. And then all of a sudden, I'm really glad I slowed down because a wreck happened right in front of me, or things like that. Or I mean, I can just go on a whole range, but it's extra sensory perception, or your intuition has increased
Yeah.
than a normal standard that you used to have. So
Yeah,
yeah, I would.
even with people, like when we talked about that quite a bit with Louis, just about like how you can feel somebody's vibe. You
Yep.
know, when you're like you're
Yep.
getting a bad vibe from somebody and you're like, there's something wrong with this person, and it turns out either that day or later on you find out they're a complete douchebag. You know, and that's usually you had that feeling about them, right? That
Yep.
usually doesn't lead you astray. And
No, no.
I find it's a part of our, we all do it, but we don't talk about it because it's not something that we
Even
can
animals have
make
it.
sense.
Some
Yeah.
Yep.
dogs are leery of certain people, and you find out they were a backstabber or whatever. Maybe
Mhm.
they're tuning into some different frequency that we're not, but there's probably
Yeah.
something to it for sure. And
Uh,
on the topic of
Sure.
consciousness, we do have the
Sure.
odd message. Go ahead. Sorry, Jeremy.
No, I just remember in the Army, I'm sorry, I was 82nd Airborne paratrooper. And I don't know, maybe my drill sergeant was making stuff up, but he was talking about silent kills. I was infantry, I'm sorry. And when you're going to sneak up on an enemy and kill them, do not look at the back of their head. Look at their hands and look at their feet when you go do the kill, because the enemy might feel that they're being watched. So don't focus your intent on the back of their head. And I was like, whoa, 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 wait a second, time out. Is that in the Army manual? And then, of course, by asking questions, I'm doing push-ups again.
Yeah.
But he was right. I mean, do an experiment. Just sit behind somebody and just stare at the back of
Oh
their head
yeah,
and
yeah.
watch their body move. We do have that. Um, I'm just saying that the UFO situation, the real ones, not the ones we make. I can't describe the words. It's like it would cause a religious experience or a spiritual
Yeah.
experience. You can't get out of it. So
Yeah.
And some
go
people
ahead
give
with
us
you.
a hard time and they say, why do you guys talk about consciousness? It's supposed to be just UFOs and this and
Yep.
that. Well, an opinion is one thing until you have new information. And then if you don't adapt your opinion, you're being willfully ignorant. You're blocking out stuff that has validity just because you're saying, I don't want to go there. But
Yep.
the more and more we talk to people that are educated, been studying this for years, people like Leslie Kane that have even had their own experiences too, and talk about life after death. And it's more in that realm now than it's ever been. And if we really want to understand it, if it comes from that, we're never going to get there if we don't look at that. And, true scientists, we've had Avi Loeb and Jacques Vallée on the show, and they reserve judgment and say, I don't know. I just go by what the information is telling me. And they've changed their mind a dozen times
Yep.
because as new things come into the picture, you have to consider that or eliminate it, but you don't eliminate it until you first really consider it and know it up and down. So consciousness is definitely more and more and more of something that we have to look at. It's the stranger of the sciences. We like to
Yes.
stay in the nuts and bolts world because we think we understand that, and we're just starting to get a grip on that. And now it's this whole rabbit hole of things that are far beyond. And even in the world of like paranormal and poltergeist, and guys like George Knapp talking about going to Skinwalker Ranch and the hitchhiker effect. And
Oh yeah.
people
I
Yeah.
that
don't
have
want
had
that
like,
happen to me.
yeah, they've had like UFO sightings and then poltergeist in the house. How
Yep.
are they connected? Even Bigfoot and UFO, like it's crazy, but it's coming up a lot. So there might be something to it,
Well, what we do is we compartmentalize, or we put things in categories. This is a ghost. This is this is Santa Claus.
Yeah.
This is Tooth Fairy. But I'm starting to think that the paranormal is kind of all the same. When you start thinking, and I've had cases I've had a case where a woman's having poltergeist activity, but she's not a religious person.
Yeah.
So she thinks it's aliens, right?
Right.
And anybody else is like, you need a priest, right? I'm just saying. Same thing if I introduced you to a reptilian alien, big tall thing, but you saw the movie Predator, okay? So you know that thing's not going to kill you because you're not armed. But if you're armed, it's going to kill you. That's the rules in the movie.
Or
But then you
pregnant.
have
Or
somebody else,
pregnant.
okay, or you, and then someone else who's very religious or whatever would think that's the devil body boucher. So
Yeah.
we all have our points of view. Ghosts supposedly walk through walls. I've heard that aliens walk through walls when people are getting abducted. They just come through the door or just walk right through it. Very similar to that case I was telling you about how Chuck Malden thought those two people were pulled through the windshield. If you think about it, if we want to break an atom, if you made it the size of a basketball, the electrons spinning around it would be miles away. You have a tremendous amount of space in between there. And if you can change the vibration of that and change the vibration of the solid object, theoretically you could walk through it. Not a problem. And I don't know how they do it. I've always wondered how they do it, how they're able to walk it through people's walls or pull people through their cars. I've heard stories of UFOs look like they're about to crash into a mountain, but they just go through it. You would have to think. It's kind of like what Einstein said. If they could travel the vast universe, we're going to have difficulty trying to shoot them down with our machine guns on our airplanes. You know, they could travel through water. They could travel through anything.
Yeah.
I think overall, it's not just one answer. I think we're being visited by others that are not us. I think I'm actually willing to say 85% of all UFOs are probably ours. We manufacture and make them, but there are the unknowns. And then you have things that are dimensional that, yeah. And then if Daryl Sims thinks they're bad, I would say as above, below, I mean, we can't leave the planet. You and me can't leave the planet, but it'd be really cool if we could leave and go explore and learn about what's going on out there. We can only talk about what we know here.
Yeah.
So can't say humans are bad. You got Jeffrey Dahmer, and then you have, you know what I mean? You always. So I kind of think that's healthy. That's a healthy statement. You can't. I hear people that say they're all good. If you say they're bad, you're wrong. It's like, man, that's when you're closing yourself off. You got to be open-minded. I mean, I actually like what Stan Freeman used to say about the folders. You have one folder that's factual, you know these are true, and the other folder that's BS. And then you have the gray folder, you're not sure, but you put it in there and you wait for more information later on in the future that might surface that you can fall back on. So I don't really disprove anything. I just know that it's just amazing that where we are today, we still don't have the answers to these questions. And I think that's what makes life amazing. I mean, there's so many mysteries out there. If we had all the answers, it'd probably be really boring. But I've been with MUFON for actually 17 years now, and I still haven't found an answer that has satisfied me. So
Have you
that's
found a change though, like within the last 5 years?
Yes,
Like,
sir.
have you noticed that it's a big
Oh, yeah.
change, right?
Big.
How
Yep.
has that affected you?
Well, I've been on podcasts where I've been ridiculed. I've been punked, like MTV punked. You know, they play the cheesy X-Files music in the background. Back in the day, we would, as a UFO investigator, we would have to present our evidence to explain why this is worthy of investigation. And they would always bring on a debunker, you know, to keep it balanced. Once mainstream media went public with the Tic Tac and the government coming out, a change happened. I mean, even some of my relatives or people that, you know, that never believed it now believe it because the media is saying it. And I'll tell you this and move on right now. Sometimes we would get a few people that had interesting backgrounds, but that wanted to be an investigator. Now we're getting people that have extraordinary backgrounds that want to be an investigator. They've always wanted to be an investigator, but they were afraid of the ridicule tinfoil hat scenario. And they think it's okay to come in. We had a homicide detective that was one of our chief investigators for a year, and his supervisor said, this is like way back in the day, he said, you can't be doing MUFON because when he's in court, just imagine the prosecutor and defense going back and forth, well, aren't you into conspiracy theories? And then pull out the MUFON bag, and then of course you're trying to prosecute this guy for murder. So he had to step down because it might have affected his real job. And I believe a lot of people were held back because of the judgment. But now that it's accepted through mainstream media, I'm seeing a whole bunch of awesome walks of life, talent that want to be members and join the organization. So to me, that's a big change because I've been at MUFON for a long time and I've never seen it like this before.
So huge boom to the MUFON.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
absolutely.
What do you
That's
think is
good.
coming next? Like, I mean, there's been a lot of talk in 2022, you know, congressional hearings, the report. I'm of the mindset that I don't care what's in the report. It's going to be scrubbed and exactly
Yeah.
how they want it and dumbed down. We just get more frustrated the more we wait for them to give us
Yep.
what we're looking for and the more it doesn't happen. So I'm more of the mindset that this is going to come from private sector science initiatives like Galileo Project, guys like Rob Freeman going around the world with high-tech gear and David Mason and those kind of guys. Where do you think this is going to go in 2023 and moving forward?
I think MUFON will play a big role. I'm hearing rumors and things like that. And don't say nothing, Jeremy. Okay, fine. So I'll just give you my 2 cents. I
Yeah.
think Congress, they got a bunch of money in that package to deal with UFOs. I don't know the name of the package, but they're going to start spreading out, not just the Department of Defense investigating, but looking for even people like us, third party investigators have been doing this for ever, and trying to just stretch out their resources to try to come to an understanding of what that is. NASA, I always thought NASA stood for not always a straight answer. So, I'm on the same boat with you. I kind of feel like it really pissed me off when they're like, this is a new thing. This is
Yeah,
not a new
yeah.
thing. This has been going on for a long time. And I can't believe they even pulled that card. That's an insult, not just to my intelligence, but even to normies that know better. But I do think that there's always an agenda to, hey, let's call them a threat so we can get money for our defense budget. And maybe they are a threat. I don't know. But I think we shouldn't even go that route. What we should do is spend the money to try to solve this mystery that we still haven't been able to solve. If the military's got crash retrievals and you got wreckage, let's roll that out. Why do you got to get a small community of scientists? Your next Einstein could be a poor kid in a foreign country that will never have that opportunity to study that. So I think you should, if you haven't solved the mystery yet, you should open the doors for everybody because I think there'll be somebody out there that'll slowly but surely will start to understand what this is, unless they already know and they're holding it back from us. Hey, I'm pretty sure we're being visited by something that's not us, but let's see some evidence. It's extraordinary claims.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that. So I think disclosure, I just got this gut feeling disclosure is going to be a lie. Sorry. The second disclosure will be the truth. And we'll have evidence. We'll have something we'll be able to hold in our hands. It's just a gut instinct. I know it's just the way I've seen it. I'm actually really surprised that a few years ago they came out and decided to push it.
Yeah.
Why now? Is it y'all spending way too much money covering it up that you're just tired of covering it up? Or is something coming? Or do you need that scare card because your fear mongering is just, we got to do a bigger pill here. Aliens, everybody get inside your house. I don't know. I just don't, to me, it's like WWE wrestling. I just kind of feel like it's fake.
Yeah.
And what's real is people are seeing things that they can't explain. And these objects defy the laws of physics. I mean, even our best planes, we can't pin them down. But you got companies like Raytheon that invented an awesome device that's mounted on these fighter jets to scan different, infrared and all that, so they can capture these objects. Because sometimes these objects are invisible to the naked eye.
Yeah.
Infrared will pick it up. Just so many. We got a bunch of technology that we should utilize to try to, get as many answers as we can. And I don't think censorship or, we need to classify UFOs as top secret. Nobody's allowed to look at UFO pictures. I think that's the wrong way to go. Unless I understand it's our stuff and we want to hide it from foreign countries
Right.
for the competitive edge in the military. I totally get that. But I don't care about that. I care about what's going on out there and who's coming to visit us.
And
Chances
often,
are
yeah.
they're probably here. They're probably underwater. So many places you could hide.
And it could be all of the above. It could be
Yes, sir.
extraterrestrial, it could be extraterrestrial, it could be interdimensional. It could be that it's a clusterfuck of things happening that the government can't come out and say, hey, this is what's happening, and we are losing our heads because we can't keep track of it, and there's nothing we can do about it.
That's like Hal Puthoff. It's basically his report saying it could be A through F. It's not one or the other. Everything has credence, and you should look at the whole body, not just pick and choose what suits your bias, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And putting our egos aside too, this recently I was watching a documentary to talk about how apes are now using tools. They're entering the Stone Age. Like they're using sticks that they sharpen up themselves to hunt for fish. Like they're entering this new stage of evolution. What if that happened to us? What if we were that, you know, when we entered the Stone Age, a previous species before us just elevated to another level? Like monkeys and apes in you know, in the jungles that's never seen a human don't know that we exist, but we coexist with them on the same planet. Whatever they do affects us and vice versa. So, you know, them living with us here for a long time, we're just now paying attention to them. That is a new idea that's sort of starting to pop into my head, saying, there's probably some validity to that, you know?
Probably, and I've thought that thought before many times.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on a boat, you're just in a little canoe, and you're thinking about fishing or whatever, and you look down and you see minnows. There's a whole nother universe, a whole nother world down there.
Yeah.
That thing's separated from us, and we can look down, and I just kind of feel, a lot of people believe that aliens are far away. Okay, there might just be right here, right under our nose. And I think one of the main reasons why people are afraid of aliens, you know, the one normies, is they're afraid that they will treat us the same way we treated animals.
Yeah.
You know, it's that fear. And I just kind of feel like, the fear of unknown. I mean, I totally get it, but I'm pretty sure there's some friendly ones out there, and we can learn a lot from each other and learn a lot about ourselves. I mean, just look at all the species that are on this planet. Insects, bugs. You walk out your backyard and just take your finger and dig through the dirt and find something. And this is just one planet, you know?
Yeah.
So
And if you look at like Stephen Hawking said, you know, you should never try to reach out, because anytime a more advanced civilization has encountered a lesser advanced one, it didn't turn out so good for them.
Right.
Yeah, but that's being said with human blinders on, because maybe we're flawed and that's how we behave. Maybe there is a love and care and benevolence in the universe that sees that that's how we are and realizes that's not good, because it leads to war and eventually self-destruction. Like, you don't advance to their level if you blow yourself up after 1 million years of evolution. You know, some of these civilizations could have been around who knows how long. And to get to your point, Jason, on evolution, when we chatted with Michael Paul Masters, he was an anthropologist, basically saying that if you look at where we came from ape-wise, what we look like now, you know, we have shrinking jaws, wisdom teeth issues, spinal issues from being more erect than we used to be. He's like, if you just fast forward evolution another however many million years, our heads get bigger because our brains continue to grow. Our eyes become bulbous, skinny little arms and fingers because we're not hunting and foraging anymore. Maybe even a lack of genitalia because we can't reproduce. We've poisoned our genome. So his theory is that it's us in the future. And that's just the natural evolution of what we will be at some point. And maybe things go wrong, and this is still the pool. This is the fountain of youth they have to return to keep us going in the future. So it's very interesting that evolution is maybe a multi-cycle thing. This may be the multiple time this has happened, even on our own planet. Who knows?
I always wonder, what could we offer them in trade? I started thinking nothing.
Yep.
We can't offer them anything except maybe genetics. Maybe that's
unpolluted genetics.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's got to be a reason why they're here. And you know what? Maybe we're talking about ego here. Maybe it has nothing to do with us. Maybe it has something to do with the planet. There's something more important.
Yeah.
You know,
or that we're not the only planet that they're doing this to. Maybe there's several other planets. It's just a project, obviously expensive project, but maybe it's something that is on a galactical scale. We don't know.
Yeah, well, if you wanna like bomb-proof your civilization, it would make sense to seed many places. You know, one asteroid, and this story doesn't exist anymore, and we never existed anymore as far as the record goes. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Maybe it's just an insurance policy on life in general.
But all our television broadcasts and stuff will still exist out there in space, traveling forever.
That's right.
Traveling forever. And then one civilization will find us and go, this is an interesting species. We'd love to meet them. And by the time they get here, our planet doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard I heard a story about a signal that was detected from another galaxy, and the intelligence community was able to decipher it, and it seemed like a distress call going out. But chances are that civilization doesn't exist anymore because it took billions of years for that signal to even get to us.
Right.
Even starlight is like that. Half of those
Mhm.
stars have since disappeared. It's just taken that long for the light to reach our eyes.
Yep. Yeah, I know. It's like I say, I would love to boldly go where no man gone before and go out there and see it for myself, but we can't do that now. So we can, the least I could do is just accept MUFON sighting reports of what other people are seeing in their yard or wherever. But yeah, Starlink, I'm gonna tell you something about Elon. If I ever meet Elon, I'm gonna complain. I'm gonna be like, listen, every time your satellites goes over a populated area, we get slammed with reports. Just it's an explosion. And it's been a pain in the hiney, but we got a simpler way to shutting those down now. So,
Yeah.
but back in the day, I would, yeah, you would, they'd just be coming in 20, 30 reports. And it's like, oh my God. But if you haven't seen it, it looks very interesting. It looks like UFOs flying in a formation.
Yeah.
They're real close together and they almost look like they're not out there. They seem like they're flying low. But yeah, anybody can check that out and get on Heavens Above and see where all the satellites are going. We utilize that that we utilize that. You heard of Heavens Above, right? Heavens Above.
Yeah, haven't used the site myself, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, just tells you where most of what's really cool about that website is it'll tell you how bright the satellites are when the
Right.
sun is hitting the needle or the solar flares. It'll tell you how bright it would be. Would someone be able to see that?
Yeah.
Sometimes when people call it, I saw a light way in the sky and it got real bright and then it took off like the Millennium Falcon. Well, I'll go to Heavens Above immediately and I'll
Right.
see where they were standing and see what satellite flew over, because that's kind of what it looks like. Once the sun is reflecting off it, it gets real bright and then you don't see it anymore. And due to the sci-fi movies and our conditioning of, we're thinking it warped out of there. And so we get a lot of reports of that. But I like those because I can explain those. But
Yeah, but then you still get the occasional person that's like, I was telepathically communicating with it, man. It's like, no, it's a satellite. Like, it was a one-sided conversation.
well, then most of the time, if they willingly bring that up before I even ask the question, I think a normal person would be like, okay, you're nuts. But
Mhm.
not me. You got my undivided attention. Tell me more. What were you thinking? What were you thinking before that situation? What were you thinking that day? Were you
Yeah,
thinking about UFOs before that day? And then a person would be like, yeah, I was thinking about it. And then I saw one. I guess that's not going to make me look credible. I would argue, no, no, no. No, it's the other way around. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, there are people out there that have ongoing experiences. They can feel them when they're coming.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing that I've always been interested in is when,
Mhm.
like, even when you were talking about your story, and I've heard you say that story before, and it's always that, but there's that feeling, whatever that feeling that you had when you had your sighting, and your sighting was over a long period of time. It wasn't just a 5 second sighting. I mean, you were at it for what, at least a half an hour at least.
15 minutes, and I could have thrown a rock at it.
Right. So that is a substantial sighting. So when somebody says, if I saw something like that and it had some sort of telepathic communication, absolutely. And now I'm all ears, right?
Mhm.
I was just more on the fence when somebody says they spoke to something. And it turns out it was the International Space Station flying
Well,
above them, right? Like that's always
well, you
crazy.
have those too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like talking about those but oh my God, I could tell you some stories. But that's the part of the job.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so um,
Jeremy,
we're
we're going to wrap this up because I know you have something to do here, sir. We don't want to make you late for your appointment.
Yes, sir.
Louis, did you have any final questions for our guest today?
No, just a quick plug for you, Jeremy. If people want to follow you or find out more, where can they get in touch with you?
I do have a Facebook account. So if you want to friend me, that's fine. I usually don't talk on it, but if you want to private message me, I'll talk. And I have a Twitter account, but it's Ray Mufon. So RAYMUFON. That would be my username, and you can find me. And actually, raymufon@yahoo.com is my email. So if anybody wants to reach out, yeah, that's where you'll find me. So
Perfect. Jeremy, we thank you so much for coming on UAP Studies today. It's
yes,
been
sir.
a blast, and let's not make it the only time. Let's have you on again soon, okay?
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's just so short. We could talk for hours.
Oh, for hours on this subject. That's why we love doing it, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you.